Oh, welcome. I am Robert McAdory, nutritionist and the host of the Bodybuilding Podcast. As promised, I'm here with Dr. Dan Skinner, and we're going to actually hopefully do a successful collaboration on Beyond the Scales. Hello, Dr. Skinner. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm doing good. Happy that we're here having this conversation. You and I have known each other for quite a while. But it seems like over the past couple of months, we had more collaboration going here. And hopefully you can share your passion. I can share my passion, and we can help the world become a better place. And hopefully, quite frankly, show them how to bring their health in a better state than where we are right now currently. Right. So let us start by saying, who are you? I know you, but tell us who you are and what your passion is.
So I got involved in integrative medicine, anesthesiologist for 25 years at that point, and started looking at a lot of people being treated with a lot of medicines and really wasn't getting to the underlying problems, but kind of a patch. Some of those patches could lead to more patches. So it kind of brought me into a different view. And I got a little bit interested, went to a seminar. Next thing I know, I'm doing a fellowship in integrative medicine through the A4M.
You're like caught in the matrix now.
Yes. It keeps getting deeper, holes everywhere.
That's right. So tell us about BioWell, how all this came about, because you have an extraordinary place of business here, and also it's called BioWell Therapeutics. Tell us a little bit about it.
It came about during COVID. I finished up my fellowship, and then I was like, well, what am I going to do now? So, I guess I'll open a clinic. So easier said than done. There's a lot more to open a clinic and then dealing with patients in that way than anesthesia, what I was kind of used to doing. But it's been a learning experience also, not only from learning how to take care of patients and not lose track of them to some extent. Just as you learn more, medicine seems to be changing very rapidly now. It's hard to keep up. I spend more and more time just going down, I call them rabbit holes. You find out something and it's like, wow, that is so interesting for longevity, health span, things along that line. And really, you need AI now just to kind of keep up with it.
Yeah, that's the world of the internet. We got too much information out there, quite frankly. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. So we got to actually navigate our way through the things that can help us. And that's why you're here. Hopefully we can do that.
One of the things about health is people, you start to ask, what is health? And, is it absence of disease, or is that health? Actually, it probably goes deeper than that. It's going to be more into building resilience, keeping your resilience as much as you can as you age, so that one thing doesn't put you over the edge. It comes to looking at different parameters, looking at things a little bit different. How can you treat patients' processes and problems and try to get at the root cause of things? And that's kind of brought me to the recent thing, is I'm back revisiting genetics again, and how that can interplay and take disease processes and look upstream to what genes are related to these problems that this person is having. Everybody has the same genes. We just have different variants of the same genes that either could be broken off switches, on switches, for oxidative stress or inflammation, things along that line. And so that becomes a unique way, and a positive way, in the sense that what their genetics are. So you can be 100% sure that when you're going after that upstream thing, you're on the right path.
Well, that's the interesting thing about it. This is fascinating because we have, like I said, too much information out there, good and bad. We need to dial it back a little bit. So tell us what you talked about, oxidative stress. Tell us about the importance of understanding your family history and what does numbers really mean to you. How do we assess all of that as consumers?
Well, when you ask about oxidative stress, that kind of goes hand in hand with inflammation, because wherever you got inflammation, you're usually going to have some oxidative stress. And if you've got oxidative stress with basically tissue being oxidized, destroyed, you're going to get inflammation involved in that. Stress in itself causes a chain of reactions that go on. Sure. We know how stress now actually causes stress, oxidative stress, damages immune activation. It's just kind of an endless thing that can go on. And now they know the pathways of all of these things happening. And again, in those pathways, that can be a genetic predisposition to really blow down one of these pathways at high speed, and or have a broken off switch that doesn't turn it off like when it's supposed to be. And so a lot of times these can add to disease processes as you get beat up over the time, infections, exposures, bad food, all of those things can just leave their little mark. And so some people are going to have deeper marks from the same experience than others, based on genetics and combination of previous experiences.
So in the wonderful world of trying to understand metabolism, how does that affect each and other? I mean, we're all different.
People talk about metabolism, but it kind of zones in on how you process and make energy, and how you process sugar and carbs, and the ability to burn fats.
Right.
Okay. And that becomes a big issue. And as we get into this more and more processed diets, it kind of poisons our ability to burn fats. We have a shift where you're either making fat and your insulin levels are high, or you're burning fat. As people get a little more beat up metabolically, they have more and more problems with that conversion from carb burn to fat burn. And so there lies one of the metabolic problems that people see with trying to lose weight, because it makes them really tired when they can't produce energy. And there's different modalities you can go to
Right.
to mitigate.
Well, I understand the meaning of exercise. Of course, I've been doing it over 30 years. So I too became fascinated with science during the years of COVID, because we learned so much about and then how to pivot and how to transition into more physical activity. But sometimes, quite frankly, people take it beyond that. And that's why I like this series, Beyond the Scales, because some people think the more you do, the better off you are. And you and I discussed that. That's not the case.
When you start overdoing exercise, your cortisol levels are running too high for too long, one of the things. But you can get a shift that you can see in some of the blood counts, where you're over exercise, and you start to see an immune response that happens in the white blood cells. You can kind of read that. And so at that point, those people are hurting themselves. A lot of athletes know that they do a daily heart rate. And if their heart rate is up from baseline, they may only do a half a workout that day. If it's up 15%, they don't do any workout that day, because they know the outcome is going to be a negative for them. And you have these people that work full time, and then they start exercising, and everybody's going to be different to you when you get to that point of over exercising. But at some point, you'll start to weaken bones. You'll see people that get these stress fractures. Well, what's going on there and stuff, So maybe they've got some osteoporosis going on, or losing their bone density. And stress will do that. Cortisol will do that. It affects your brain. Too much stress associated, like post-traumatic stress disorder, actually kind of, in a sense, melts the hippocampal area of your brain, as that cortisol just keeps going higher and higher and staying high.
People fall into the trap of the matrix of doing more and more. And that's why for years I've understood, hey, not necessarily the more the better. A lot of times it's more intentional and more concentrated.
So a lot of people are just so excited to lose weight that they just, especially with the GLPs now, they just stop eating, and they're not bringing protein in, and they're losing muscle, because when the body's starving, it goes into starvation mode. And when you're losing weight, you don't want to be in the starvation mode, because the first thing that happens is you're going to burn through your muscle, because that's metabolically active tissue. And for survival, through 30 million years of evolution, we learned that if you burn through your muscle, your daily metabolic needs will be lower, and then it begins to hold on to fat for dear life, pun intended on that. So you'll see these people losing muscle, and I'm not sure if they don't actually do some permanent damage, because they're going through periods of not having enough protein to make enzymes that are needed for daily activities of the cells. So there could be some damage going on there. And it's hard, as the older you get, the harder it is to rebuild that muscle. We're looking at people, everybody doesn't want to get their weight done, but it's kind of funny. I'm not worried about the weight. I want to see your body composition. And then with that body composition, we can set goals, and we can monitor you to make sure you're not losing too much muscle mass right off the bat, because then you got to do something different.
Right. You and I talk a lot about nutrition, and we talk about calories in, calories out. That's not necessarily the same thing. Talk about the values of nutrition and calories and how sometimes we can be misled on the composition of foods that we're eating.
Well, first off, calories in, calories out, exercise. It's a 97% failure rate. So it doesn't work.
Okay.
We'll reinterpret that so you can get that idea.
Yeah,
but,
I got it.
But what it really is about is how do you decrease hunger? So people who are on GLPs, they have this opportunity because they have a chemically reduced hunger, but at the same time, they may still be eating highly processed foods, the chemical-laden foods, and all that has an effect on people. But they really have to do is become a little bit more aware of what they're eating, why they're eating, when they're eating, and start to listen to themselves. What's making them eat at that moment? I mean, anybody can be completely stuffed. Right. And you can eat about more until somebody gives you and offers you some brownies. And so then it's like, oh, 2 brownies later, that was great. You know, you didn't eat it because you were hungry.
Right.
You ate it because you wanted that hedonic effect, that little high you get with big surge of sugar and insulin that gets released with that, which immediately starts making even more fat. So you're really going down that way. So either you're making fat or you're burning fat. Insulin levels are high and your sugar's high, you're making fat. You get your insulin levels low if you can, if you not, because you start to become insulin resistant. That's one of the first things we try to do is get people's insulin resistance down. And that way they're not tired and they can switch into fat burn a little bit easier that way.
So you hear a lot about insulin, and we're in the world of obesity.
Right.
And so a lot of information out there on obesity, the do's and don'ts or whatever. Talk to us, expand a little bit about where we are now, because I know we're spiraling out of control when it comes to the world of obesity. How can we dial it back in? Some of the smaller things that we can do, steps that we can take to improve our state.
3 things.
Okay.
Make that easy.
Okay.
Don't eat high fructose corn syrup. Don't eat seed oils. They're very inflammatory. They may affect your ability to burn fats. And don't eat high processed foods, because when you eat these highly processed foods, they get in your stomach. There's no fiber in them. The stomach squeezes once and they're out in the intestines, and immediately they're turning into sugar, which leads to this big sugar explosion in your body, leads to the hedonic effect. You get some dopamine release, but you also have the insulin that pops up after that. And then now you're in the fat make mode and you're there for a little bit. And then what happens is, because there's nothing to slow down that emptying and deliver it over time, you kind of overshot the insulin. There's nothing else left to come out of the stomach. And now you're tired because you got too much insulin relative to the amount of glucose you got. And it's kind of a repetitive circle that you get into. Seed oils, no high fructose corn syrup, and no ultra processed foods. Now there's even better. There's some ultra processed foods, kind of like the mystery meat. What's it really made?
Yeah. So, I was reading some article maybe a few weeks ago, and we were talking about the increase in our population, how we have more people to feed than land to grow things on. So when you talk about ultra processed, aren't we kind of headed that direction, or how do you minimize that?
Well, I don't know for sure, but I speculate that the pressure to do that is about making money. Because if you can make more money and not use as much land up, then yeah, it's going to keep you in competition with the other guy that's doing it. So I don't know if I believe that you couldn't still feed people with doing it the more of a organic way.
So don't believe the fear tactics then.
No. It's kind of funny, fear tactics, because they work. They scare people. They politically persuasive. But a lot of times, free market will come up with better and improved ways of doing things, just left on their own without intervention by rules and things like that.
Right. That's interesting coming from you. Medicine background, you try to figure out ways to help people and to reduce their medicine intake in a lot of ways from what I'm getting.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that really got me interested in this. I'd have patients doing anesthesia, and in anesthesia, you got to know about a lot of different disease processes so you can make it go smooth. But I was just seeing more and more people enlist 15, 20 different medicines. I couldn't keep it up in my head. I don't know how
Right,
they
right,
did.
right,
And you start looking at side effects of these things, and there's a lot of side effects that can happen from almost any medicine.
right.
And almost any medicine has some nutrient depletion that's associated with it. And then if you start to look at the side effects in the little package inserts, well, it kind of starts to sound like the side effect you get when you have that particular nutrient. So they kind of falls in together, and then you have the compounded effect, multiple drugs, and
Right.
it starts to cause other problems. And but they're great, incredible amount of drugs that are out there. It's incredible amount of research. It's just a little bit different approach on how you look at stuff.
Okay.
Just trying to get to fixing the problem, see if we can't get down to that point, and maybe we won't need that Band-Aid or that medicine that's really just kind of treating the symptoms.
So the medicine, in some regards, should be some type of help, if you will, to get them started. They don't necessarily have to stay on those dosages.
Different things, and
Okay.
there's different ways of looking at that. I mean, you can get into how can we treat blood pressure without a medicine. The easiest way is blood pressure medicine, but there are some other approaches you can do that can help with that. Genetics can help with some of that. You can look and
Right.
see where there's some upstream stuff. Well, let's work on this, and that may have an effect. Knowing how
right.
people age and how certain things become a little bit scarcer, and how, but just by increasing some of the supplements, you can actually get some good results there. I'm not trying to negate anything that's going on out there, but I just think sometimes there's another viewpoint and another
Sure.
approach you can add treatment for people.
You must understand your genetics, and you must understand your history, your family history.
Which
and
is genetics.
Which is genetics, right. Coming to the BioWell therapeutic system, and that's why I like talking about beyond the scale.
It's not going to come and you're going to give you a little magic
Sure.
pill and you're going to walk out
true.
with it, and it's going to cause you to win the lottery, whatever.
That's right.
But because it does take work on people's part, because they have to change their lifestyle sometimes. And a lot of times people think they're doing stuff that's good, and maybe for them specifically genetic based, it might not be the best thing. But a lot of times it's like, what is good? Because you're constantly hit with a barrage of stuff. Oh, this is great for you. And you'll see who's not guilty of going, I tried that for a while and then I ran out of it. And then I was like, I don't know, supplement, I'm going to try it different. So you kind of hop around. Sometimes the genetics can kind of pinpoint you on things that'll be really good for you long term.
I think the state that we're in, a lot of times people become too dependent on things. And they, like you said earlier about medicine, and then it goes too far one way, then it's hard to dial back the other way. So we need something to bring us back to the middle. What are some of the simple things? Because you have people, I'm going to take more and more of this. I'm going to not exercise, and I'm not going to do any physical activity, which is exercising, and I'm not going to eat this. So you have people using medicine as a crutch a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, everybody may be guilty of that at some point. I mean, there's some things that how we evolved. We evolve with periodic fasting. We evolve with having to be active. We evolved with sleeping at night. There was really, maybe you could have a fire going, but it's going to burn out in the morning. And so we slept more. We probably slept better. It had less stress, than constant barrage. You got this, you got the bills, you got this. It just doesn't end. And that stress does add to cortisol levels increasing and all the side effects of that. The thing we focus on, what's the main things that bother them? What do they want to have? What's the most important things to them to do? Because that's what they need to focus on, because they've already focused on that. Sometimes as we go along, I might discover some things that I'll bring to light and say, hey, this is something we need to be focused on also for you. But first thing we do is we do body composition. See where they're at. We get them to fill out some paperwork, and I can take that and kind of look at it with the labs and come up with a problem list and potential things to work on each one of those problems. And now that I'm adding the genetics in there, that's just going to be a nice layer, because I'll know the genetics. It's 100% right there, potential problems. And so when I gear trying to fix things from the top down, I can go to those genes and say, these are the ones that are associated with potential problems like this. Let's work on this from this direction in addition or as opposed to this other little potential fix. So now I got a little direction on fixing things.
Body fat
Body fat.
analysis, and you actually bring them in and you do that. What do you use?
So
What
to
system do you use to do that?
It's called an InBody. There are a number of systems out there that use body analysis, but it gives you an idea how much muscle mass a person has, their ratio, where they need to go. Do they need muscle mass, or do they need to lose fat and have plenty of muscle mass left? You always want to make sure they're maintaining their muscle mass as you're going along. And there's hard numbers you can follow. You can tell people there's some people just don't have their kind of skinny fat. Okay, they have a lot of fat relative to what they're supposed to be, but they have no muscle, and so they're not that healthy anyway.
Right.
And some of them have gotten there because they're so good about starving themselves,
right,
that they've starved themselves into a situation where they've lost a lot of muscle. Their body has broken it down. And some people are more muscular than others too. So there could be some other underlying causes there, but still, that's a real basis place to start because muscle mass is very important for health.
When people lose weight, they first start a program and they lose 10 pounds in a week, 15 pounds in 2 weeks. Talk to us about what does that really mean, and is that really a true analysis of weight loss?
You're having weight loss like that, you start to think, well, could they be losing that much? And is muscle mass being lost with that? A lot of times as people start into fixing their diet, changing their diet, they get they get inflammation. You can see it in people sometimes. They're puffy everywhere, you'll see that get better a lot of times when you're on the right track and they're reducing inflammation. And so a lot of that can be water weight that can be associated with that, and then they'll get rid of that. And some of that they lost was due to excess edema.
So talk about what is that? What is water weight? What do they consider that? Is that part of the equation? What do they consider?
Well, if you've got inflammation going on, it's going to be really hard to lose weight. Those cytokines that are being floating around, they're stimulating you. The body's trying to keep weight on because there's problems out there, and we need to keep all the resources we have. Fat, muscle, everything.
Right.
So you're fighting an uphill battle. I find a lot of people in there. I ask a lot of questions about bowel questions. Irritable bowel syndrome seems to be pretty high in people who are overweight. And a lot of it goes along back to what they're eating and the toxins that are in the food and eating the wrong things and their metabolism being all messed up.
Muscle loss, water weight, what does all that really mean? To sum it up, let's go over like a quick little explanation what that means when people are dropping weight very quickly.
When people are dropping weight very quickly, you start to think a lot of it could be initially some extra fluid that's on board from edema, from just inflammation that's going on. You want to follow them. You want to follow them in body or some other similar thing so that you can make sure they're not losing muscle mass.
Right.
Because that is the currency of health, is muscle mass in the long run. But losing muscle mass, that means you're probably not having enough protein intake to support that muscle, but also for the building blocks for the enzymes in all your cells that aren't muscle.
Right.
They need protein also to function correctly.
We talked about InBody though. What is an InBody so people will know, because you got different metrics that you can use to actually test out what body fat is and what fat gains are. You got different metrics you can use. So tell us what InBody does.
So it used to be the easiest way would do those caliper things where you pinch
subcutaneous fat where you
pinch it on the belly, and it
yes.
kind of, you go through a little scale and you give you.
I gotta wait for that.
It's kind of not that accurate.
I know, right?
So, but the InBody uses these frequencies that it puts. You hold your hands and feet are all separate, and it puts different frequencies through your body. And it can measure each limb separately, and the abdomen. It can also actually measure your visceral fat.
Yeah.
And so that's really nice to do, have absolute measurement. And so you can see if it's muscle mass you're losing or if it's fat. And then you can also see the visceral fat as you begin to lose it. And that's the fat that's under the muscle, around the organs. That's the fat that's associated with a lot of the bad stuff. A lot of inflammatory cytokines are released by that. There are things that come out of that will drive your blood pressure up. And so some people, depending on why they have high blood pressure, just losing a good bit of weight, they're going to lose those inflammatory cytokines that are being released, and their blood pressure is going to go down.
So when you talk about diets, losing a little weight, you got different kinds of diets out there, different fads that people go through. You have keto diet, you have vegan diets, you have vegetarian diets, you have all kind of diets out there. So people get fascinated with these diets.
Oh yeah, it's always a new fad coming up.
It's always
right?
a new one. I always say as a nutritionist, I meet people where they are, but tell us about those fads. It's always a new one.
The thing about it is, most of them will work if you follow.
Yeah, anything will work.
You might not be healthy with the result. Okay,
that's right.
But you can lose weight on these things.
Sure.
And you can gain it all back very rapidly if you're not careful.
Very rapidly.
The big thing, I believe, is teaching your body, learning to understand why you're eating, whether it's just that you need the food, or is it the hedonic eating where you're getting a dopamine release, or is it conditioned eating because everybody's eating at 6 o'clock? Are you really hungry? Maybe not. But teaching your mind and body how to be less hungry is, I think, more of an answer than the calories in, calories out that fails 97% of the time. And in doing so, you need to follow things like muscle mass. You need to, in some people, you want to see that improve and they'll feel better. And you want to see just them losing fat and visceral fat, the bad fat that's, I meant to say, that is associated with hypertension, cardiovascular disease, cancer, things along that line, diabetes. All of that is related to that visceral fat in some indirect way or direct.
I was a gym rat. I became an educated gym rat. Then I got fascinated with science, into food science. And so I'm loving the concept because he's talking about all the things I really believe. 1,000 calories from pizza is different than 1,000 calories from chicken breast, green beans, and rice. That's different. So the composition of calories is not the same, and it impacts the body differently.
In fact, depending, you could have twins like you.
You
and I.
Yeah, we're twins. Yeah, we discovered that like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. What is it, 23andMe?
Yeah.
So, but they can eat the same stuff, and one of them gets fat, and the other one doesn't because he eats all the carbs first. Okay, and that dumps in there, and what does it do? Shoots his insulin up and his sugar up, and he's making more fat than the other one who's eating the proteins and the vegetables first, and then eats the carbs. And it doesn't have that big surge of carbs. So it's got less total insulin produced. And insulin has a lot of inflammatory things that goes on. A lot of bad stuff can be associated with high levels of insulin constantly. So one's driving their insulin up, eating the same food, but in a different direction and how he eats it and when you eat it. And the other one's not. He doesn't eat late. He eats earlier. He doesn't eat 50% of his calories after 5 p.m. But they're eating the same total amount of food.
There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of variables that you talk about. I think we covered a lot of things. What's your take on people counting steps these days? You see that people, what does that really mean? Now I know in a clinical setting, the benefit of taking those steps, but out here,
just looking at their phone and saying,
I did 30,000 steps.
30,000 steps. Well, if they're using it to have goals and that they're using that as say, okay, I need to at least have this many every day, that's not a bad thing.
Right.
I mean, you can say, well, for me, anything less than 5,000 steps is like a couch potato or something, and so that's a difficult answer.
Sure, yeah, it is. Because people are fascinated with the amount of steps. I walk around, people say, I took so many steps today. They're really excited. But if you feel like that helps, that helps.
Yeah, I think that's great. As people age, though, a couple of things. Aerobic exercise is great. The combination of aerobic and weightlifting is probably even better for older people, especially because they need that strength. They need that strength, And they say that you should do the aerobics first and the resistance stuff after, but that's really rough. I can't do that.
Hey, America. The best time to do it is when you do it. That's the best time to do it. So, we covered a lot. And I just want to thank you for this time, this collaboration on Beyond the Scales, really understanding Beyond the Scales. And I hope we can have more collaboration on this subject because I really do believe people really need to understand the numbers and how it can impact. I just want to compliment you one more time about your beautiful staff. Tell us about your staff. and tell us where to find your location.
Right behind the Walgreens on Red Avenue, which is just south of the main hospital, about 2
This is
blocks.
Huntsville, Alabama.
This is Huntsville. And
we got all people all over the world.
one of my key staff people is my wife, who's a nurse practitioner who has gotten into the world of integrative medicine. She goes to most all of the meetings that I go to,
Right.
and she's a great sounding board for me to ask things because I think she's smarter than me. But I'm very busy all the time. So impact thing, like I say, it's always a learning experience as you go.
How do we get in touch with you? Would they just look up? You got a website?
We have a website, BioWell. And
we'll have another collaboration on Beyond the Scales, and we're going to give you a tour of his facility coming up at a later date and time. Until then, I'm Robert McAdory. This is Dr. Skinner. Live Life Fit, Beyond the Scales.